Welcome to the Great Basin Seasonal Outlook for November through February. Over the last 7 days, we've had fairly dry conditions across much of Nevada into southern Idaho, and some wetter conditions in central Idaho and from Wyoming down into the mountains of Utah. Over the last 14 days, the only precipitation that has been above normal has been over parts of western and northwest Nevada, which was over a week ago, and over central and eastern Utah and parts of the eastern Arizona Strip that have been above normal. Otherwise, any precipitation we've had over the last 2 weeks in Idaho and Wyoming has generally been below normal for the time of year. Over the last 30 days, we've seen very warm temperatures across the west. This is largely due to stronger ridges of high pressure building across the area. However, we have had a few cold fronts that have moved through, temporarily dropping temperatures, especially just within the last several days. Precipitation since October 1st has been, again, you can see those pockets of near to just above normal in those areas where we saw the above normal over the last 2 weeks, but still very dry conditions, at least overall for the last 30 days in Idaho, western Wyoming, and into parts of southern Nevada. And many of these areas in Idaho and Wyoming down into northern parts of Utah is where we have seen our large fires over the last 30 days that have been more problematic. However, those have mainly subsided due to the recent cooler and wetter conditions. Since the beginning of the water year, again, this looks the same since the beginning of the water year, which was just under 30 days ago. Looking at the drought, we have seen drought continue and even expand over parts of the north where we do have moderate to severe drought in parts of Idaho and western Wyoming, and even a small pocket of extreme drought. And then we are seeing those moderate to severe drought conditions in the far south with abnormally dry conditions in the rest of the Great Basin. Looking at the outlook through the end of January, we are expecting the possibility of the drought to intensify or persist in southern areas and maybe even into Wyoming, but we are expecting some improvement in Idaho as we do have cold fronts moving through, bringing chances of precipitation to the far north. Looking at our drought time series from the year 2000 all the way through our current drought conditions in 2024, and you can see the black boxes are where we have had our above normal acreage, and this says Nevada, but it's really a good representation of the Great Basin as a whole. So you can see where we were in our drought conditions this year, which definitely set us up, all things considered, for an above normal fire year, and we did see those conditions in parts of the Great Basin. We are seeing some drought reemerge with the drier conditions, and we could see this intensify a bit heading into the next fire season. That will certainly be something to watch because that would put us into another potential of an active fire season. Looking at fuels conditions, our fine fuels, we still have the areas of grasses to deal with, anywhere from southern Idaho down into northern Nevada and parts of northwest Utah. So if we do see prolonged dry periods going through the next few months, and we do see that followed by wind, we could see an uptick of fire potential in those low elevation grasses as long as they are not covered in snow. Going forward, but that would be just a temporary condition and a short-term concern for a burning period or so. 10-hour fuel moistures have definitely increased across the area with the recent cooler and wet conditions. 100-hour fuel moistures are still low over southern and eastern Nevada. This is the area that has seen either little or no precipitation from these storms, and similar trend in the 1,000-hour fuel moisture. Looking at our ERC percentiles, they have been going down with the cooler and wetter conditions. Some pockets of near the 70th percentile still exist in some of our drier areas, but overall ERCs are trending below the 70th percentile. Looking up north, still in western Wyoming, ERCs are above normal and kind of trending what would be near historical maximums. However, that's still very low, and you can see these maximums remain nearly consistent going through the winter months. But it has been on the drier side in some of those areas, so we are seeing those ERCs above normal, but really the rest of the Great Basin from southern Idaho down into Nevada and Utah shows ERCs near normal for the time of year, which again would be relatively low. So looking at our forecast going forward for the next 7 days, the possibility of precipitation here from the National Weather Service shows the amount of precipitation possible in the next week. And you can see generally up north is where we'll see some of those higher amounts in the mountains of Idaho and Wyoming and northern Utah, also in parts of the northern Sierra, but otherwise lighter precipitation across much of Nevada and Utah, and still that dry area in southern Nevada. The 8 to 14-day outlook taking us through the 14th of November shows generally warmer and drier conditions for much of the Great Basin. That storm track really hanging in the north, bringing the better chances of precipitation to Idaho and Wyoming, and then at times down into Utah as these systems drop into the Rockies. This is the total forecast precipitation amount from a model through November 15th, so for the next 2 weeks. And you can still see that same trend with the heavier possibilities of precipitation up north and then dwindling as we go further south into southern Nevada and a little bit more spotty into western Nevada, but those heavier amounts kind of hugging the coast in California and possibly into the Sierra. Looking at the next 4 months, this is a Predictive Services outlook. Looking at temperatures in the top row, you can really see for much of the Great Basin still showing on the warm side for temperatures overall. Precipitation still showing a little bit more of a drier trend, at least for the next couple of months down south, with the better potential for moisture through the next month or so up north. And then as we get into the meat of winter, January, February, could see overall wetter conditions out west before we possibly see some drier conditions emerge in the north. So again, kind of a mixed bag of precipitation, and right now, no long duration, heavy precipitation signatures. We'll probably see some of those shifts as we go through the next few months. So putting everything together, we are expecting normal fire potential across the Great Basin through February, which would again obviously be low fire activity. But the only exception will be if we do see prolonged warm and dry periods, followed by wind, especially as we get into later in November through December and early January. We could see an uptick in fire potential in those low elevation grasses as long as there's no snow on the ground. But again, that would be fairly event driven and very, very localized and of a very small portion of this time period. Looking at nationally over the next 4 months, you can see really kind of a patchwork of above normal conditions anywhere from California, even down into the Southwest for November, and then over into the plains. And then by December and January, things definitely taper off in the West. Still some above normal in Southern California, but obviously anywhere bordering the Great Basin, expecting normal conditions, which would be low fire activity for the time of year. That concludes our seasonal outlook for this month. Check back next month for the latest updates.